iHeart, get ready. Fantasy football is here. Welcome to the Scout Fantasy Show. ScoutFantasy.com is home to the Fantasy Football World Championships and the best players in the world. Real money winners giving their secrets to help you win. Now exclusively on iHeart. This is the Scout Fantasy Show with your host, the one, the only, Dr. Roto.
Hey there, everybody. It's Dr. Roto. Get out the insurance cards. Get out the copay. The office is open, my friends. All right, some news this morning. Hue Jackson, the man who's won 3 games in, I don't know, like 3 years or something crazy like that, was fired today by the Cleveland Browns. He was 3-36-1. Quite possibly the worst tenure in the history of professional football. I have one thing to say to Hue Jackson. Good riddance. Adios. Arrivederci. Au revoir. Look, I'm not saying that Hue Jackson isn't a player's coach. I'm not saying he's not a guy that could be a good offensive coordinator in the NFL. I think he has been before. I just think he was over his head. And he's playing on a team right now that needs to learn how to win. And they're obviously not winning with this group of coaches. So I'm not blaming Greg Williams. I'm not blaming Todd Haley. These guys have been around the block a bunch of times. But they need to learn how to win. And you can only be close for so long. But against the Steelers, they look terrible. I guess if the game was close and they were fighting to the end, maybe he would have bought himself another week or two. But they just look tired and slow, and they didn't protect Baker Mayfield. It was time to go. It was time for him to go. So my guess is Haley or Williams will take over. Haley, of course, has been a head coach before, was not very successful, but he makes some sense to me. And then in the offseason, you go find somebody else. And I think that this is a job that I would want. You've got a great young quarterback. You've got a good young running back. You've got some good receivers, a tight end. You've got a defense that's aggressive. You're onto something here in Cleveland. You have a fan base. You just have to learn how to win, and you have to protect. And you have to protect, right, your quarterback. And when Joe Thomas retired, they had no backup plan, and it was a problem. Big problem. Baker Mayfield was a piñata this week. So there you have it. All right, another piece of news that I really want to talk about is, of course, that I think Dirk Cutter has a big decision to make between Jameis Winston and Ryan Fitzpatrick. So let's talk about this very, very briefly. First of all, you are not winning a Super Bowl with Jameis Winston. So let me just get that out there right now. You are not winning a Super Bowl with Jameis Winston. It is not happening. End of story. Not happening. That said, he is a good young quarterback. And Ryan Fitzpatrick is a good older journeyman quarterback. So if you replace Winston, you're basically saying we want to move on from him. We'll go with Fitzpatrick in the until the offseason, and then we'll start anew. That's what you're saying. And maybe we ride Fitzpatrick next year. We take the shot, then maybe we get to the Super Bowl, and then we start over because we have to draft a quarterback of the future. That's option number 1. Very viable option. Option 2 is you go back to Jameis Winston. You put Ryan Fitzpatrick back on the bench. And when this disaster happens again, you take him out and you put Fitzpatrick in and you keep on going like this. Because something has to give. I think that the Bucs have to look in the mirror and say, look, this dude, meaning Jameis, is not the guy to lead us to a fantasy championship. Or a real life championship. He has a better, actually, I'll say Jameis Winston has a better chance to lead them to a fantasy championship, lead your team to a fantasy championship, than to lead the Bucs to a real life Super Bowl. Just fact. I think the Giants have soul searching to do. Eli Manning, if you just looked at the box score and you saw 30 for 47, 316 yards and a touchdown, you'd be like, Eli played well. No, Eli didn't play very well. The Giant offensive line is terrible. Saquon Barkley ran for 38 yards. Pathetic. And the Giants have issues. So you're going to a bye week next week, Giants. Maybe this is the time to see what Kyle Lauletta can do. I think you owe it to your team because here's the problem. Eli Manning's got a year tops left. If you don't see what Lauletta can do now, What do you do in the offseason in next year's draft? Do you draft another quarterback? Or do you say, oh, we've got our guy in Lauletta? I don't think we know. I know that Giant fans want to see Lauletta. The problem is this. If Lauletta gets in there, what happens to Barkley, Beckham, Shepard, and Ingram? Their fantasy value goes in the toilet. That's a problem. It's a big problem. Okay? So let's go through the games very quickly, and then we'll go and we'll talk about the fantasy preview for tonight's game against the Patriots and the Bills. Let's stick with the Redskins and Giants here. Alex Smith doesn't even throw for 200 yards again. Adrian Peterson scores a very long touchdown. Good for him. Doesn't look very, very fleet-footed, but he did well. And once again, no other Redskin receiver having a day. Jordan Reed, 7 for 38. 7 for 38. Now, one Redskin receiver gave you 10 fantasy points yesterday. Sorry, Jordan Reed gave you 10.8. There you go. I apologize for that. Pathetic. Terrible. Speaking of terrible, Philadelphia and Jacksonville. Isn't Jacksonville terrible right now? I mean, sadly to say. Take out Blake Bortles rushing, because he ran for 43 yards. Carlos Hyde had 11 yards. TJ Yeldon had 7. 18 yards on 8 carries. That's atrocious. This team is lost. They could use Jameis Winston. I'd rather get rid of Blake Bortles, and I'd rather have Jameis. I'd give them a better chance. Jacksonville's still not winning a Super Bowl, but they'd be better off. For Philadelphia, they grind this game out. You know, Carson Wentz just does his thing, 286 yards, 3 touchdowns, 28 yards rushing. Love the dude. No receiver really went off. Zach Ertz didn't, but you don't expect any receiver to go off against the Jacksonville Jaguars secondary. You just don't. All right, Denver and Kansas City. Pat Mahomes, another 4 touchdowns. Another 4 touchdowns. Sammy Watkins Roto, 107 yards and 2 touchdowns. He looked terrific. Kareem Hunt looked terrific. Kelsey looked great. This team, who doesn't want to see the Chiefs play the Rams? Who doesn't want to see that game in the Super Bowl? I know I do. For Denver, I thought Phillip Lindsay looked really good. I did. Royce Freeman, who? Bye. And even Devontae Booker looked good in spots. But I think Demaryius Thomas needs to get traded because they need to go with Sutton and Sanders. That's got to be the duo. That has to be the duo moving forward. So I was wrong with one major player yesterday, and that player was David Njoku. I mean, he did nothing. He didn't even appear in the box score. Now, we talked about the Browns in the beginning of this podcast with Baker Mayfield just had no time, and the Steelers were swarming him. The pass rush, he had no chance. I know he's only sacked like twice, but the pressure was all over him. James Conner looked phenomenal, 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. I know that Le'Veon Bell is on his way, but you know what? Do the Steelers really need Bell? I'd get rid of Bell and, move on. Let's get a pick. Get a pick. I think you'd be fine with Conner. I know he's not Bell, but he's leaving anyway. He's leaving anyway. All right, Andy Dalton played a good game, 21 for 34, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns. Mixon had 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tyler Boyd had 138 yards and a touchdown. If you stacked your Bengals, you did a smart move. If you had Dalton, Mixon, Boyd, Green, you are probably my rich friend today. And if you backed it up with Mike Evans, if you're able to afford that, good for you. I want to give kudos to my man Willie Walls, who texted me on Sunday morning, who said, Doc, I like Adam Humphries. Jameis always throws to Adam Humphries, 7 for 76, 14.6 points in a PPR. You can't beat that. Speaking of beating, I think the Jets are just taking a beating every week. This offense, Jeremy Bates, I don't know what's going on here, but they have to improve their play calling. 57 yards rushing, 153 yards passing. Who do you think you're going to beat? Chicago didn't have to do that much. Mitch Trubisky didn't even play very well, and they won by a lot. Jordan Howard looked good. Tariq Cohen looked good. Anthony Miller was okay, not special. Trey Burton didn't have to do that much. I mean, this was a case of a team who just won by so much they didn't have to do much offensively. All right, Baltimore, Carolina. Alex Collins scored for the Ravens. That surprised me. Hayden Hurst scored. I told you that was going to happen. I did. I thought this was going to be a good week for him. For Carolina, though, I am so enthusiastic right now about DJ Moore. 5 for 90. They're on to something with DJ Moore. They're on to something, and I'm telling you, moving forward, he's the guy. And here's why. You know that Cam Newton is not a very accurate passer. But DJ Moore, you don't have to throw him long passes. You throw him short, quick outs, which is fine for Cam because he can't really screw that up. And DJ Moore can run. So he can make plays. I really, really like DJ Moore moving forward. I think he's going to win somebody a fantasy championship. I feel that strongly about him. Seattle and Detroit. Man, Detroit is so hard. Golden Tate, 7 for 50. Kenny Golladay, 1 for 12. And they were losing in this game, and they still didn't go to Golladay. But Seattle, man, Seattle just runs that ball. They grind you down. Carson and Davis, 35 carries between them. I mean, Russell Wilson only 14 completions on 17 attempts, but they won the game, played good defense. Congratulations, good for them. They looked pretty good. I just was a little shocked at Detroit. Speaking of shocking, Jordy Nelson 1 for 14, Martavis Bryant nothing. Where are these guys? We knew Jared Cook was good. We knew Jalen Richard was going to be good. I mean, Seth Roberts was a play, but Brandon LaFell? Seriously, Brandon LaFell? I didn't see that coming. Doug Martin did a good job, 72 yards. For Indianapolis, though, man, I really like this team's upside. Jack Doyle was back, 6 for 70 and a touchdown. Mack looked sensational again. I had him on my bench in 2 leagues. Great job, Dr. Roto. Nyheim Hines looked good. Hilton didn't even do anything. You didn't even check into the Hilton this week. I mean, he only had the 1 catch for 34 yards, but everybody else was so good. It was great to see. All right, the Cardinals beat the 49ers, and I think we were onto something here with Byron Leftwich. Thank God Mike McCoy's gone. David Johnson had 16 carries. He had 4 receptions. Larry Fitzgerald had 12 targets. Christian Kirk had 7 targets. This is what we were looking to see. Fitzgerald, Cook, Johnson. This team has players. Now they just need to step up a little bit. So good job by Rosen. There probably is a smidge of upside there now when there absolutely wasn't. So let's take a look at Rosen's schedule a little bit here. Moving forward, let's see. They have a bye week. Yeah, then they have the Chiefs, Raiders, Chargers, Packers, Lions. It's interesting. Not the worst. For San Francisco, just so you know, Pierre Garçon's going to be done. Bye. See ya. Kendrick Bourne, 7 for 71. That's a name you might want to write down there. I think he's onto something. By the way, I was totally wrong about Raheem Mostert. 2 rushes, 18 yards. It was just terrible that they didn't get this guy more involved. Alfred Morris had 6 carries. Please, somebody on the face of the earth, tell me why Alfred Morris is getting 6 carries and Mostert's getting 2. Somebody please tell me that. I want to know. All right, the Rams lucked out and beat the Packers 29-27. I didn't think they played very well. And I'm going to tell you one thing. I'm going to tell you that Jared Goff misses Cooper Kupp desperately. He misses him desperately. And you could tell it out there. When he goes back to pass, Kupp was always open. And it made everybody better. They need Cooper Kupp back quickly. Woods and Cooks were okay. Gurley's just sensational. 114 yards rushing, 81 yards receiving, and a touchdown. For Green Bay, Devontae Adams was great, but nobody else was great. And Aaron Rodgers let you down. 286 yards and a touchdown, and you expected more. I know it's crazy to say, but you expected more. Okay, Drew Brees. I got questions about Drew Brees right now. I mean, he was 18 for 23, but he only had 120 yards because they ran the ball 29 times. The offensive line is playing well. The defense is playing well. The running backs are doing well. They don't need to throw the ball. And that's a problem. If you have Drew Brees in fantasy, I mean, what did he really give you yesterday? 10 points? What game are you winning? Kirk Cousins throws for 359 and 2 touchdowns. You certainly could win with him. Stephon Diggs, 10 for 119 and a touchdown. Thielen, 7 for 103 and a touchdown. I mean, that's terrific. You expect that from New Orleans, but you're not getting that from them. You're not getting that from them, and that's a problem because they're so good right now, they don't need to do that. Now, we know that Drew Brees is capable of doing that, but we haven't seen it. Okay, Buffalo against New England, so let's talk about Buffalo. I don't even know if LaShawn McCoy is playing. He cleared the concussion protocol. I assume he's playing. I would start him. I wouldn't feel great about it. I'd start Kelvin Benjamin. I wouldn't feel great about him too. Derek Anderson, this is just a mess. Maybe they score 10 points tonight. I mean, maybe. Gronk always plays well in Buffalo because he's from the area. I expect that he plays, and I think he's going to score. I think James White has a huge night, and I think Julian Edelman has a huge night. And don't forget this, Chris Hogan. By the way, Hollywood Hogan played at Buffalo. You know he's going to want to score. I think the key here is Josh Gordon out. If Josh Gordon is out, Hogan, I believe, scores. And there you have it. I think New England wins this game 34-10. Okay? But right now it's time to put away the insurance cards, put away the copay. The office is closed, my friends. Now look, I want you, if you want to win your fantasy football league, go to scoutfantasysports.com. That's scoutfantasysports.com. Enter the promo code ROTO70. That's ROTO70. We'll give you 70% off your first month. And hopefully you can win your fantasy football league, because that's how we roll at Scout Fantasy Sports. All right, now, guys, back tomorrow. This is Dr. Roto saying be well and take care.
Thanks for listening to the Scout Fantasy Show. There's never been a better time to join the Scout Army. Visit scoutfantasy.com. Use the promo ROTO for 2 months free. And don't forget, fantasy players, please thumbs up the podcast on the iHeart app. See you next time. Go Scouts!